I look very specifically after a subsection of accounts for Microsoft. So I look after what we define as our devolved government region, which is predominantly Scotland and Wales-based local authorities, central gov, health, police, and fire, so public sector in general. And I also look after the West Midlands council regions, including the West Midlands Combined Authority themselves. So it's a wonderful opportunity for me to do a little bit of outreach to some more organisations that sit both within the West Midlands Combined Authority area and beyond. My LinkedIn message, I think, has broadened it outside of your usual remit, Aisha, about what the Microsoft Teams wellbeing experience is all about. And the context of well-being for us at Microsoft is focused very much on what we define as our Viva ecosystem, but think of Microsoft Viva as a phrase, as a pseudonym for Microsoft well-being. So it refers to a series of technologies and applications predominantly connected to Microsoft Teams that are designed to support well-being growth around users inside of organizations using the Microsoft 365 technologies. So at Microsoft ourselves, our wholehearted belief is that people who are energized and empowered are basically the key to successful organizations. And we've seen that, or recognized that a lot of organizations are more and more challenged in that balance between supporting engagement and productivity. In that council space, I see more and more of it being an inclusivity conversation of post-COVID. A lot of digital enablement and digital working and hybrid working has gone on, which is fantastic for work-life balance for information workers. But it's created, in quite a lot of scenarios, a digital divide between the information worker ecosystem, those who sit by a laptop every day, and those that are probably more frontline, like things like care home workers and leisure centre workers and librarians and those sorts of individuals who perhaps would have thrived off of the community associated to having a full office. And full offices are things that we rarely see these days. So how do we create a digital ecosystem that effectively supports that balance between engagement and productivity to ensure that people feel sustained? And what's what's at stake? What's the conundrum? What's the challenge effectively of not doing it? So the statistics that we've seen is that 41% of all employees are considering currently leaving their employer, and that creates in itself conundrums and challenges not just to the individuals themselves around their future, but also costs to the organizations around, recruiting, onboarding, ramping up, those sorts of things. By the numbers, what do we see? A large number of organizations are trying to address that by looking at least human capital management by 2024. The challenge is that a large number of digital employee experience related initiatives may not succeed. One of the biggest conundrums that I come across when talking to public sector organizations within my remit has been actually that tactical based campaigns or projects that they might have implemented mean that users have to go to another place and have another login and another thing to do. And we're all consumed at the minute with business as usual and with trying to keep on top of workload that actually it leaves less time for that ecosystem. So, having a human centric approach, thinking about people at the center of that at the center of that policy, that philosophy of well-being is key and core to part of the Microsoft thought process in this space. And you can see why, in terms of the statistics, it's an important thing to think about. Reducing workforce fatigue is showing success by reducing that by 44%, increasing that intent to stay, and also as a byproduct, improving performance for individuals. So by creating that employee experience, you can resolve quite a lot of conundrums, but we do appreciate that it is challenging. There is an increasing number of tools for users that they find difficult to navigate between, or in quite a lot of instances don't know are there. Part of the reason we're here today, help people understand what might be there under the hood. They find that the existing tools might be, outdated or irrelevant to them and their roles. As I said, I deal with public sector and councils like WNCA in particular. You have 900 plus functions. It's really difficult to keep all of the tools that you provide relevant to everyone. And a lot of business leaders are now looking for a comprehensive employee experience platform that goes beyond just dealing with one aspect of things like purpose or well-being or growth, communications, etc., etc. So that's where the Microsoft Viva ecosystem came about. It was that human-centric approach into this hybrid working world, using a digital flat platform that's integrated into the thing that people are already familiar with, we hope, in that Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So that it means that well-being and purpose and growth and learning and development are all part of the day in the life of experience for your employees. Now, I've got a little bit of cold, so I apologize if I drink tea every now and again to try and keep my my voice from cracking. But to ensure that you're not listening to my nasally snotty tones all the way through, I've got a little video to talk through what that Viva experience is all about.
In the hybrid world of work, people are connected through their screens more than ever before, making it crucial to create a great employee experience that helps them thrive, connect, and stay in the flow of work. Now you can with Microsoft Viva, the first employee experience platform built for the hybrid era. Your people can interact with personalized experiences to discover company news, tasks, and conversations that help keep everyone connected.
Viva supports our employees to understand better the patterns over time. It empowers our managers and ultimately will help us to serve our customers more effectively and better.
Access formal and informal learning when and where it's needed, making it easier for people to learn while working.
But the icing in the cake for us really is taking that information and surfacing it to the people that need it to be able to deliver the best possible services to our customers.
Easily access content and expertise across the organization, making it easy for people to find information and put knowledge to work.
Taking the insight, turning it into action becomes really easy. We look at this data in an aggregated way. Giving yourself personal time back is absolutely critical. And our leaders really believe in this and take on this challenge. And I've seen this insight propagate down through the whole organization.
Get data-driven insights and recommendations, improving productivity and well-being while staying connected to tools they already use.
The Microsoft Viva Insight really help our associates be more productive, be more effective, and have a better quality of life. We are a well-being company. We need to deliver a great associate experience so that they can deliver a great customer experience.
Microsoft Viva. Empower people and teams to be their best.
So there you go. You don't have to listen to me all the way through. So yeah, that's what Microsoft Viva is all about. It's all about creating those moments that matter to employees during their day in the life of experience at work, using the Microsoft 365 platform to deliver that. And that can be anywhere in that employee journey from someone who's just trying to onboard and understand about the organization and what they need to do in their role, through development, growing, feeling empowered to do what you need to do every day, and understanding your purpose inside of that organization and the way that you can create the best impact as an individual, all the way through to things like, how do I make sure that I foster a culture and a well-being that's healthy for both me, my family, and my organization at the different points in your life journey as well. As a dad to two small children, hence why I'm full of the bug. There are different priorities for me now than there were when I was a recently married individual and still had a lot of time both before and after work to try and to progress my career goals, and then even at the end of that journey, around that offboarding experience of how do we create an experience where people are at the center, but they have the ability to connect in all the ways that are important to not just them but the organization as a whole. So obviously I've done a lot of like high level what's and where are's and where art thou's, but what is Microsoft Viva? It is actually a series of tool sets and applications accessed, as I said, through the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, each designed to address a particular conundrum associated with that journey. So that could be, onboarding and understanding, how do I connect with leadership, with peers? How do I get the answers that I need? How do I understand what's going on in the organization? And how do I start to kind of connect with others? It could be insight of, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What behaviors and cultures should I be adopting that's suited to that organization? How do I give my feedback and insights back to leadership and ensure that they're listened to, and that I feel like I'm making a difference to the organization in what I'm doing every day? Understanding my purpose. What am I driving towards? How do I make sure that I'm complete my career aspirations align with that of the organizations? And then finally, making sure that I've got the opportunity to grow my skills and improve my my ability to achieve through knowledge, through learning, through accessing the right information at the right time. And that's effectively the ecosystem that we're looking to provide with Microsoft Viva. It's all built on the Microsoft 365 platform, which means that it's built on the same privacy and security and compliance capabilities that Microsoft 365 provides, giving you the confidence that each and every one of these applications can be used by your employees without any worry around data protection concerns or security concerns of the data that's being interacted with. It's very much kept within your organizational walls. It's supported by the same platform and administrative services as the rest of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem as well. So your IT teams won't need to reskill or relearn. You shouldn't need to bring on new people to service this platform. And there is a lot of integrations into your existing learning management tool sets, existing wellness resources, CRM information, etc. Apologies, I don't know if that was an intentional off muting whether someone was looking to ask a question. If it was, feel free to interrupt me. I'm pretty thick-skinned. I don't mind being interrupted during. Super. So I think, we're not here to look at slideware all the way through. So I think the key here is to give you an example of what this sort of stuff looks like. So I'm actually going to jump out into a little demo environment. This is a Teams login, and hopefully everyone on this call should be hopefully high level familiar with what Microsoft Teams looks like. But for those who might not be, who might use, say, another tool set, this is the front page of the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. Teams is a platform that allows you to collaborate and communicate and share across your organization. It's designed for your organization. And as you log in, you typically see a screen a lot like this one, with a series of tabs along the left-hand side that talk about, activity. You probably have a chat tab for communicating with colleagues and peers. You'll have a series of teams and channels that you'll interact with. So you can see here that it's very similar to the Teams experience that you probably have already today. The difference will be you'll see a lot of things that highlighted as Viva along this left-hand rail, from Viva Connections, Viva Insights, Viva Engage, Viva Goals, Viva Learning, Viva Topics, Viva Pulse, a lot of Viva components. Each one of these is effectively a pillar inside of that Viva ecosystem designed to support a particular function. Each one of these can either be individually aligned to your team's ecosystem, or you could choose like this to have them all pinned and delivered. The likelihood is that you guys today will have probably got access to an element of the Viva experience without your knowledge of it. So to give you an idea of where you could search for yourself for that Viva experience, along the bottom of that triage of or list of applications that you may already have pinned, there should be this 3 dots. You hover your mouse over it, it gives you the option to effectively search for apps. If you type Viva in, you should then start to see the list of Viva applications that your organization has made available to you. Don't panic too much if you don't see any Viva applications in there. While we do by default enable Viva Insights, Viva Learning, and a couple of the Viva applications to be available to you, some of the Viva components you're seeing here are a paid premium edition, which is why you won't be able to see all of them. So they wouldn't necessarily be available to you out of the back, but definitely come and speak to myself or your Microsoft team if you have interest in those as we go through. The other thing that's plausible is sometimes IT departments will choose to turn off those default applications until such times as they've been assessed by privacy security teams, or even that they'll turn them off by default until such times as there's a part of the organization that has a defined need for it. So if you can't see Viva Insights or Viva Learning or any of the applications in that list, then you can always reach out to your IT team and say, you know, I know Microsoft provisions us as an M365 organization access to Viva Learning and Viva Insights. Is it possible to talk about what would be required to enable them? Those who want to follow along, then feel free to click on some of those Viva applications. And if you click on them, they should pop up on this left-hand rail. And then you can right click on that and you'll see the option to pin. In this instance, because it's already pinned, I've got the option to unpin and uninstall. But you can then pin that to your rail if required. So as I log in, I get the first Viva experience surfaced to me when I enter into the world of Teams for the first time, and that is Viva Connections. Viva Connections is, as an individual, my one-stop shop interaction for organizational data and information. And ostensibly what it is my intranet front page. So most organizations I work with will have an intranet for staff information and resources. It is the hub for information and data that you can then interact with to find, you know, the difference between where's my HR data, where's my T&E information, how do I submit expenses, etc. But what you see here is actually it's tailored to me as an individual. So you saw previously that I mentioned quite a lot of information provided for organizations isn't tailored to the department or the individual. You know, they see the same front page whether you're logging in as a HR individual or a finance individual or a leisure center worker or a refuse worker or a NHS member of staff or a doctor, a nurse, or a policeman. So what this does in Viva Connections is tailor that experience to me. So you can see that it's actually highlighted to me that I have pending expenses to approve. It's giving me the option to connect to my HR and finance applications so that I can maybe understand a little bit more detail about my holiday. Although you can see it's already connected here, that it's showing I've got the opportunity to see, this is obviously the standard bank holidays. It's a US org. You can see I've got Thanksgiving listed. You can see that I've got that 11 days worth of paid time off to book in. You can see that I've got an upcoming pay slip and so on and so forth. So it's tailored to my experience, and that could be tailored in a lot of different ways. So it could also include, you know, my leadership communications, so specifically my line managers and that team, that departmental communications, as opposed to absolutely everything. But I've also got, you know, the ability to look at frequently visited sites, what sites I'm following. I've got the ability to navigate the intranet in the same sorts of ways that I would day to day. So that kind of interaction also can have the ability, although not in this instance, there they go, to highlight some of the other Viva applications. So if I was coming to this as a landing page and I was there logging in the morning going, right, I've sat down and it's 8:30 and I might want to have a little bit of a look as to what the insights around my working life and days all about, I could click on Viva Insights, and you see on the left hand rail that's jumped me straight across to the Viva Insights ecosystem. Now this tool set gives me, as in this instance a manager, two views: my personal view and my interaction with information and data, which talks about setting up recurring one-to-ones with my peers and teams. It gives me the opportunity to send praise to colleagues and show gratitude for people who've gone above and beyond, something that I often admonish myself for being guilty of doing. I think it's unfortunate, an unfortunate part of British culture that we're quick to highlight things that go wrong, but take often for granted the things that people do that are great. So I personally actually have set up a reminder for sending praise every Friday, and I include often the leadership teams of those people that I want to give praise to. Interestingly, it makes me feel great actually being able to share some of that stuff at the end of every week, and it's a wonderful end to the week and puts me into a great mood for starting my weekend. I can also look at programming my focus time. So if I want to set up a plan for looking at either helping other people, or if I want to look at myself of setting up focus time or a shared focus plan where I want to kind of spend specifically time focusing on a particular task with, say, a project ecosystem, I could actually start to look at how do I want to create a cadence around focus time. As a manager, I might want to look at that for my team. I might recognize that actually, because at the top of this page, there is a large amount of out of hours working, I might want to actually look at creating focus time to ensure that people are able to complete the core tasks they need inside of their working hours day to day. Or I might be looking at things like long and large meetings and understanding actually how do I, ensure that people aren't in lots and lots of back-to-back meetings. Creating focus plans and focus time could be a great way of ensuring that I've got that opportunity within my team for them to get through the administrative tasks that they need to do day to day without getting distracted from other meeting activity. You see, it's obviously got my ability to look at focus time. So it's giving me an idea to the open slots that exist in my diary this week that I might want to choose to book focus time around. You can clearly see my diary must be quite full because it's suggesting times that are very much outside of my of a standard working day. But you can see that it's giving me that opportunity to interact with booking my own focus time. And then actually I can start to look at things like creating focus modes. So we've seen through a lot of research that actually people having particular focus music, prioritizing tasks, setting timers, those sorts of things ensures that people actually use the focus mode. One of the biggest things that I've heard as feedback is that when they put focus time in, often they end up deleting it to complete BAU. What we found is actually if you start to book in frequent tasks or tasks within that focus time, you're more likely to protect it if it's something that isn't just title focus time with no particular task set around it. You've got that ability to put focus timers on, which will mean that you can look at things like creating breaks within the focus time. You can then start to cross-check how long you've been there for. I don't know if you're anything like me. You might find yourself frequently looking up and going, oh, it's 5 o'clock and I haven't gotten up, I haven't moved around, I haven't made a cup of tea, I haven't had something to drink. All of those things mean that actually my productivity across that time is likely to have decreased because I know if I don't take regular breaks or stay hydrated that I can't maintain an effective level of focus or attention. So having that ability to book in breaks or have breaks naturally put in is really important. And I can start to set tones and break periods and look at the way that I might want to structure that focus time. And when I hit that focus time ecosystem, it also puts in specific music that I've selected that helps me to focus. If you're keen to take breaks, so another thing that we often recommend is that people take breaks between completing activities, and you want that to be a guided break. There is a series of videos in Viva Insights that we make free for users to interact with via the Headspace application that people can then utilize to do guided meditations around things like de-stressing, ensuring that you put in yourself into a mindfulness state for focus time, understanding what you're thinking and feeling at that moment in time. Are you feeling particularly overwhelmed or stressed or angry, and thinking about that, and go through that kind of guided activity ecosystem. So you can see here that from an individual interaction, I've got a fantastic opportunity to focus on my own well-being activities, whether that's ensuring that I'm taking time for focus, that I'm looking at praise for colleagues, that I'm setting up one-to-ones to ensure connection. It's very much focused on that balance between well-being and productivity as an individual. These things are all designed to ensure that you maximize the maximize the opportunity to ensure users do feel connected, do feel calm, do feel like they've got they're empowered to create the best working experience for themselves. Layered on top of that, there is also an experience for managers and leaders that draws from the information signals that M365 provide to help leadership make important decisions around well-being. So you can see at the top of the page here that as a leader, so this is an experience that only I can have as a leader rather than as an individual within the organization, I've got the opportunity to flick between my organization, which is a combination of my direct and indirect reports. So if I was a finance lead, it would be all of my finance reports, and then the entire company. So I can start to compare and contrast a series of statistics, cross-checking my team versus the organizational average around things like, after hours collaboration. There are a lot of people working out of hours, and do I feel comfortable as a leader with that? If I am worried about retention, if I'm worried about people leaving the organization and they're not necessarily getting the best well-being experience, I can start to look into some of these statistics to help build a plan around addressing it. So you can see here that it's actually saying schedule send, so that you can protect others from off-hours interruptions. So this basically means that you can set up a status that stipulates I'm now no longer working, and then when someone tries to IM me or email me, it basically highlights that this isn't within the working hours of that individual. Would you like to schedule the send? So you can press send at that moment, but it won't land in my inbox until, say, 9 a.m. the next morning when I'm due to come online again, which then decreases the likelihood of me interacting with people outside of my core working hours. And each of these activities, each of these statistics that talk around things like collaboration hours, meeting hours, recurring meetings, multitasking hours, have a plan around them to help you to focus on the best well-being outcome in that particular statistic. This homepage is just an amalgamation of information drawn from each of these different pillars of focus. So that could be looking at teamwork and collaboration. It could be looking at users' efficiency and productivity, or it could be focused specifically on the well-being of the organization. So when I go into this, you can still see that after hours collaboration that was top and central up here has been drawn from this well-being section. You can also see that I can drill in or start to look at other well-being focused information inside of that plan. I've got the opportunity to show a little bit more detail, and I can then start to understand a little bit more about what that particular metric is all about over time. And I can interact with the graphs and the telemetry to understand a little bit more about each one as I go through. So as a leader, I've got the opportunity to understand way more depth about what's going on inside of our organization. Each of these statistics is built and pulled from Microsoft 365. So the uninterrupted focus hours and those sorts of things are drawn from people's calendars, their Teams meeting interactions, their exchange information. So that's email rather than telephone exchange if you're old school like me, occasionally think of it that way. And you can see it varies dependent on, again, that filter between my organization and the company on average. So I can start to see that actually my part of the organization actually has more out of hours working than the company average does overall. Super. So yeah, this is kind of, I guess, the insights experience. And you can see that there's a difference there between the individuals themselves and their interaction with your own working day and setting my praise and interacting with my colleagues and booking my focus time. And then as a leader, me making more effective decisions to protect my staff. And that can go into huge more depth. So I'm not going to go into it here because I'm conscious I've got to go across all of the Viva stack, and I don't have all the time of the day to go into the huge depth. But you can actually create custom reports that go into way more depth inside of each of these So you can create Power BI dashboards effectively that go into each of these reports in way more depth, and also give you different cuts and slices of that telemetry. So organizations that I've been working with that have been taking on the manager and leadership views have started to integrate this information with their, say, annual staff surveys, or they've started to look at offboarding interviews and other bits of telemetry, and they augment that information or this information, depending on which way you want to do it, with each other to ensure that people are being able to make the best decision they can around how to protect staff, how to get the best out of productivity, how to ensure well-being and reduce churn within the organization, how to infuse and promote the best in terms of teamwork, and so on and so forth. So you can see there, that's all about that kind of well-being experience. At the top here, you can see there's still quite a few Viva ecosystems for me to potentially engage and interact with. The next I'll probably go through is that learning experience. Lots and lots of people have started to have a conversation with Microsoft about what learning ecosystem should I be looking at, viewing, and setting up for my organization? How do I think about ensuring people have got that opportunity to progress and work in the best ways possible? The thing that seems to be a common misnomer is that people say, I'm looking at replacing my learning platform. Can I replace it with Viva Learning? In theory, the answer to that is yes, but I generally recommend no. Viva Learning is not a learning management system. It doesn't necessarily have its own learning content. It's actually something called an LXP, or a learning experience platform, which draws from a series of learning ecosystems. So one of the biggest and most common frustrations that we often hear from individuals and employees is that there's too much disparity and siloism. That's a weird phrase to use, but there are too many silos for them to navigate between to understand where to find learning. Although quite a lot of organizations will have a learning management system, or maybe even multiple learning management systems, they don't necessarily combine all that content together. And even those that do just provide one learning management system, you'll often find that there's learning content that's created by the organization itself that isn't necessarily put through that same LMS platform. So, learning videos, stuff like this, for example, that's been recorded, how is that then made back available through that LMS? Viva Learning is all about doing exactly that, combining a multitude of different learning providers and sources, and that could be your own SharePoint ecosystem, that could be your own recording, your own files, your own Word documents, PowerPoints, PDFs that are built around learning. But it could also be a series of third parties. So you see here Saba and Go1. Contoso is the organization here that Deborah works for, my little demonstration environment. my pseudonym in this instance. So this is their intranet. You can see here that it's got documents created by Megan, Johnny, people inside of my org that I can use for learning specific info. Some of them are videos, some of them Excel, PowerPoint files. I've got that ability to effectively integrate that SharePoint ecosystem, so that ad hoc learning, with some of the more programmatic and systemized stuff like Coursera or edX or InfoSec or John Bersin or Pluralsight. What Viva Learning gives me is a fantastic opportunity of being able to filter that information into my interests. So you can see here I've set a series of interests that I want it to filter around, and you see artificial intelligence is being surfaced to me quite a lot here. Within that initial instance, brand management, communication, the things that I've effectively highlighted as my interests are being filtered here, despite the source. You can see there's LinkedIn, there's Go1, there's a heck of a lot of LinkedIn. If I filter it across, you'll see that there's a series of different sources that it'll actually be filtering that across from. So you see there was a Pluralsight, there is a Coursera, there's quite a lot of different providers that it's effectively airing that information across. If you're like me and you also struggle sometimes to fit your training into the working day, it also gives you the option to filter learning content by duration. The fact that it's also integrated into your Microsoft 365 environment that you heard me mention at the start of this call in conversation means that I can actually start to look at adding it into my calendar as well. So if I want to program in that training, you can see that it's actually looking for gaps in my diary that I could fit that training in with. And when I click save, it effectively adds it to my Outlook calendar. And then when that time slot comes around, it'll pop up with a link to that 9-minute learning course that I can then take. So having that ability for me to be able to infuse it into my working day more readily, more easily is a fantastic benefit to me as an individual. And it's got the standard kind of bar of helping me to understand, what learning have I started, what might have been recommended to me by my peers, what have I already completed, what collections have I got of content that are related to each other, and then what might have I bookmarked to look at and return to back again in the future. So this is a fantastic way of me being able to organize my learning content across multitude of different siloed sources and make sense of it, and then integrate it into my working day in a way that makes sense for me. Just making sure that I've got a broader set of skills as I could possibly achieve against my kind of career aspirations and goals. And you'll see this platform grow over time with some really interesting integrations with things like LinkedIn, helping you to build career paths based against your existing skill sets and the types of people that are looking at your type of roles, and maximizing therefore the output that individuals will get from guiding their skills in a track, which is kind of cool. So we'll see some of that sort of stuff as time goes on. So I'm conscious I've just zipped through insights and learning so far. I haven't heard any questions, I don't think, unless there's some going on in the chat. But yeah, I'm going to take a little pause to reflect. Any questions so far? I'm actually quickly check through the chat. Laura, I can see you put the Thrive stuff in there. Fantastic. Okay, bit of Coventry stuff. Live channel. How does that start? Okay, so Laura, you said, how does that support overall employee well-being? Feels a bit more like spying. Okay, fantastic question. So you'll see, I'm assuming that was referring to some of the Viva Insights ecosystem, drawing telemetry from the organization. So the first thing to highlight is that the information that's provisioned to me is only provisioned to me if I have a statistic minimum set of data. So if I'm a manager and I've only got a team of 2 or 3, I can't get access to any information about that level because I'd be able to identify individuals. So it can't be used for spying in terms of targeting particular individuals and how they function and work. It's very much about aggregated and amalgamated information, which means that from a spying, I guess, thought process, it can't really be used for anything that would be deemed as performance management. And you'll see that everything that it recommends inside of this ecosystem, scheduled to protect time from out of hour interruptions, promoting an active no meeting day, and anything that's in here is a recommended action is very much designed to protect employee well-being, and it's specifically targeted and filtered in that way. So we've built the telemetry and data and the platform the way that it promotes the delivery of this information in a way that focuses on that well-being output and outcome. But yeah, I can understand why people might view that as or may struggle to kind of see how that might not be Big Brother-ish. Great questions again, Laura. So Headspace. So Headspace as a video or as an application is a third-party tool set. We've paid for a specific number of Headspace applications or videos to be infused in Viva Insights. But Headspace. Oh, sorry, was that someone coming off mute? Sorry, if you've got a question, do feel free to interrupt. But yeah, Headspace that you can see in some of these videos that I mentioned further down here. We're looking at some of the focus mode. Headspace is an application, third-party application that's all designed around mindfulness, focus, meditation. It's designed very much to promote healthy thought process, healthy mindset. And we all know that a healthy mind in a working environment is particularly powerful and very valuable ally. We all in our working environments get moments where we feel stressed, where we struggle, how to deal with anxiety, perhaps depression. Headspace provides a series of applications designed to get us into the right thought process mindset to support or overcome some of those conundrums and challenges that we deal with every day. People use these in different ways. It's down to the individual as to how you want to, even if you do want to use them. I've only used a couple myself, but it's like a guided meditation process. Effectively, it kind of talks you through what that looks like. And if I had huge amounts of time, I'd be able to take you through one of them, but I'd highly recommend, if you're interested in that Headspace ecosystem, go have a little look for Viva Insights in your Teams application using that 3 dots. And you can then go through and start to explore some of those Headspace applications yourself. Super. So I bounce back to the Microsoft Viva Connections page. One of the most interesting topics that I've been talking to organizations about recently is that disconnect between leadership and frontline function, and how do we remove some of the barriers associated to that connection that sits between the two. Viva Engage, the artist formerly known as Yammer, is the Microsoft social media platform. But what we've done is actually enhance and invest in quite a lot of services inside of this space to help transition the way that that looks and feels, and is designed much more about breaking down those communication barriers. So, some of this stuff here you see here is very much a standard social media platform. It gives me the ability to highlight particular discussion topics. It's got the opportunity for me to ask specific targeted questions, and it's got people's opportunity to embed links and respond to things that I might have put. And there's a little bit of telemetry here around things like who's liked it and who's seen it and so on and so forth. You see, I've got the opportunity to build polls. I've got the opportunity to interact with different communities. I can ask questions, send praise. I can engage with people's storylines, either my feed or who I might be following. And that's all kind of a standard internal social media platform. Yammer is not publicly available, so it would be, I guess, from a security and compliance perspective, a benefit to utilize this for any internal social interactions. And I see a lot of people use it for that. They're kind of corporate version of a social media platform that they can also include things like product launches around, or specific internal policies and campaigns, or even asking questions. If I jump back to the slide deck to kind of lead you through what Microsoft's thought process is in this space, we very much look at how we wanted to build a sense of community across a massive, large organization of 144,000 employees. It's really difficult in that sort of size and scale of organization to feel connected to the leadership who you never physically see or meet in quite a lot of scenarios. But even for smaller organizations, sometimes that, like, how do I connect or how do I ensure that my voice is heard and my concerns are raised, or how do I feel like that I'm being listened to, and that as a member of staff I have a voice, can be a really key thing to raise. So providing a safe space for employees to engage with leadership, and for leadership to see what employees are talking about and be able to start that conversation, is really important. And inside of Viva Engage, we now have created this leadership corner ecosystem, as well as an Ask Me Anything platform. So you can see that having an open door policy allows me to effectively connect with a series of leaders and peers to share both their work experiences and learn from their stories. So in councils, quite a lot, I've been talking to organizations about how do you create a digital ecosystem that frontline workers want to engage in. So digital inclusivity has become a really big hot topic within councils. In how do we speak to builders and brickies that sit in the planning department? How do we then reach out to care home workers in the care ecosystem? How do we interact better with refuse workers, and so on and so forth? Well, one of the biggest conundrums we've got there is traditional communication methodologies of email and intranet updates are not particularly well received by that audience, either because they're not particularly great on a mobile platform to interact with, or two, because actually just being literate and reading isn't necessarily something that people in those types of roles are confident with, let alone then the digital platform. So we encourage leaders to actually have this more social media approach to communications in those ecosystems, and to have that open interaction. It means that it's really important for those people on the front line to interact with those sort of stories. So having a vlog inside of the Viva Engage platform is key, but also hosting things like Ask Me Anythings and targeting them about particular topics, like, say, in this instance, diversity and inclusion, promotes cultural initiatives led from the top. But having open interaction is important to then ensure that those people at the front line feel included. So they've got that opportunity to ask questions that you can then build, a town hall or a webinar about, or actually in that Ask Me Anything, you can have a series of questions that are polled, that are put forward and then upvoted by peers, and then you can choose to respond to those either in line in the social media application, or create an event around it, and then in that webinar look to answer some of the most top voted questions and queries, so that people feel like they've got that opportunity to engage one-to-one with leadership, that they're listened to as a staff base. Something that's coming soon to Viva Engage that I use internally now all the time, because of Microsoft's complexity, it can be really difficult sometimes to get an answer to a particular targeted question. So I've recently wanted to try and get better interaction with some of my customers, and I wanted to set up something called a shared channel. And I really struggled with understanding who within Microsoft has the ability to effectively authorize or show me the policy on how we authorize people, external companies, to interact with us at that level and depth. I'd asked multiple peers, managers, line managers, product team members, and never gotten an answer. As soon as Answers was launched in Viva, I put it to the platform, and within, I would say, about 14 hours, I had a response with exactly the way that I'd interacted, exactly the way I sort of raised the policy. And that's because social media platform was able to reach much broader inside of my organization than I was able to just from myself. So I saw basically a series of people respond with a ping such and such will know, ping such and such will know, and eventually it got to the exact right person, and they pointed me in the direction of the best corporate policy. You can see that the questions that are most sought after by your organization will get upvoted, which will then make them more visible to the people looking to manage, curate, respond. And I have responded to a few questions that I've seen inside of the Viva Engage platform myself, to promote better knowledge sharing and prioritizing those things that are most sought after across the organization. And you can see that there, ask and answer questions that that it works really fantastically with that mobile application as well. Be able to kind of filter the questions that are specifically targeted to me as an individual versus, my activity generally, and the questions that I might want to be asking and looking at. A nice little addition, but you can look to start to create a little bit of gamification inside the platform to help promote people interacting if need be. So that can be, badges, or that could be physical rewards, or it could be, time with the leadership. The more badges, the people who interact most with the platform. There are ways and means of effectively increasing the interaction with the system in general. So I find that kind of Viva Engage ecosystem is one of the best ways to break down those barriers of communication. And I've talked to a number of organizations who've provisioned, say, an M365F plan license to the frontline staff, and they've said, we provision it and no one interacted. I've often then asked, well, how have you changed your interaction to better suit that audience? Because, the way that you communicate today is designed for people who are information workers. Have you done any Ask Me Anythings? Have you built like a Q&A, questions and answers system? Have you done any leadership corner communities? Have you changed your leadership to communicating in vlog style inside of those departments? What ways have you effectively promoted the interaction? And often the answers to those questions are ones of, oh, well, I didn't really appreciate or think that we needed to tailor it to that community. Super. Well, I'm conscious of time, and I want to give a little bit of time at the end of this for open Q&A. So conscious I haven't been through absolutely every component of the M365 or the Viva ecosystem. What I wanted to give was a little bit of an idea of the difference between what's included in M365 plans, because those of you who are keen to explore the Viva ecosystem may want to have a look at what you've got already licensed today. So for those of you who are Microsoft 365 E3 or E1 or F plan licensed or E5, you can see that there is a series of Viva components that are available to you today out of the box. And then there are also a series of Viva components that are viewed as add-on licenses that would then therefore be premium additions to the M365 SKU. That ecosystem is growing. So we now have within the Viva suite Glint, so that's no longer an extra price. It's included free of charge now, which is a fantastic surveying platform, in fact one of the world's best, that we bought not too long ago. We're also in the process of launching things like Viva Pulse and Viva Amplify, which better organize communication. So if you are interested in Microsoft's wellbeing platform, I highly recommend that you reach out to either myself or the Microsoft team, so your account manager, and organize for a Viva session, and we can talk you through all of these components in a little bit more detail. Or if there is a particular targeted area of interest for you, whether that be growth or purpose or connection or insight or communication, then we can look to tailor the communication specific to that topic. Believe you me, we could spend probably a full day going through each component on its own and talk through the functions and features. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone on this call at least came away with an awareness of the fact that Microsoft does have a focus on employee well-being and a series of applications that you can look to explore yourself, and hopefully give you the opportunity to maximize the value of some of the licensing that you already have. And for those of you who are more interested, give you the opportunity to interact with us on these sorts of topics in a little bit more depth. Right, conscious we've got about 4 minutes left.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that.
Show.
There is a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know if you can have a look at that. It's one from Naomi about setting reminders and prompts to send praise to colleagues. I know I'm conscious of time now, and obviously another question about what are the key takeaways for well-being in the workplace that don't require additional license fees. I think that's what we were mainly looking for today. How can we utilize what we have for employee well-being without having additional costs to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So the couple of things that I'd highly recommend that you do is have a look on that left-hand rail to see if you've got access to Viva Insights and Viva Learning specifically. Those two applications should be available by default for an M365 licensed individual. So in your Teams rail, they should be available to you. If they're not, then please reach out to your IT teams or those people that sit in your leadership to say, we'd be really interested in enabling those features, because effectively someone in the IT department has chosen to disable them, and you can then look to re-enable that function and feature. Explore then setting up your own kind of focus time, interacting with things like virtual commute. So Naomi, great question. Yes, there is a capability for doing virtual commute at the start and the end of each day. This is one of the times that I used to when I commuted to and from the office. Switch in my mind between home life and work life, finding more and more that those environments are blended now that, as you can see, I work from home, and sometimes my 1-year-old and 3-year-old or 4-year-old now, sorry, walk in behind me and ask me questions or show me their drawings. It can be difficult to then create that split. Yes, you can absolutely set up reminders and prompts to send praise. There are a plethora of wellbeing features that I can send you details on how to explore post this call. So I'll send you guys some links to our Viva adoption guides that have a series of day in the life of experiences if you're a manager, if you're an individual, and how to interact with some of these platforms, because I think you'll probably find some of those guides quite useful. Keys for me are explore what Viva apps you have access to today out of the box. Viva Insights and Viva Learning are probably the key two that you should find. Speak to your Microsoft representative if you're keen to understand and explore the wider ecosystem of well-being within Microsoft world. and explore some of the resources that we'll send across to you post this in a little bit more depth, so you can get to understand what Microsoft are doing to support individuals and employees in getting better well-being outcomes and achieving more with kind of work-life balance.